Hi folks, Zafu here. Today we're going to be looking at Guardian of the First Ones, which is one of the bosses we tested on the PTR a couple of weeks ago. This fight seems to be a pretty straightforward DPS check with a couple of interesting mechanics and interactions that you'll see as the fight plays out. We'll be looking at a tank point of view for this video. This is Exality from the main team. So first thing you need to know about this boss is that he's got a depleting energy bar. He starts on 50 energy and his energy depletes throughout the fight. When it hits 0, he starts to cast a raid-wide damaging ability that increases in damage each time he casts it, and he'll just chain cast it until he's got energy again. The way to replenish his energy is to put the boss next to these 3 crystals you can see around the room. There's one there on the left, right, and middle behind the boss as we look at the fight now. There's a couple of abilities I'll go through first, and then we'll talk more about the crystals and the energy management. The first is these sentries, which he spawns in front of him every 30 seconds or so. Those sentries actually silence any players stood within them, and you can see they just kind of move around the room randomly. The second is Disintegration, which is a frontal ability, which he targets towards a random player, and it sends out a line directly in front of him and stuns anyone caught in it. The third is Threat Neutralization, which you've just seen go out there. It's 3 targets on this raid size were targeted by this, and it just deals AoE damage around you after a few seconds, so you just need to spread out with that. Relatively straightforward. Now, what you're seeing here is Purging Protocol, which is the Enrage cast, which happens when his energy hits 0. He will continue to chain cast this, and each cast deals 100% more damage than the previous cast. So to stop him from doing that, you position him next to this crystal, and you can move him while he's casting. So you can use this to maybe take 2 or 3 stacks of the Purging Protocol, and then move him during his 4th cast. This will be really important in maximizing the damage you do in the encounter, because it's quite a tight enrage check, as you'll see here. We're about a third of the way through his health bar, and we're a third of the way through the pylons we can use, and we have already burned Heroism at this point. So we'll watch another cycle here, and I'll talk a little bit more about how we're handling the mechanics in the kind of main phase. So we've got the raid spread out, so when the Disintegration beam comes in, not everybody has to move, and they can keep damaging. The Threat Neutralization targets are also pre-spread, so it makes it much easier to position these in a safe place. The sentries also then aren't silencing the entire raid, and we're not spending our entire time running away. We couldn't figure out if they target people or not. They don't appear to, but it's worth bearing in mind that there may be some ways to control them. Now you notice his energy here in the kind of right-hand side of the screen is ticking down. We're on 9 at the moment, so I'm going to call for the raid to stack up on the purple marker, and we're going to start using some raid cooldowns to survive the damage. We're going to let him do 2 casts here, because we did 3 on the first set. So we deal with the Threat Neutralization, and then the Purging Protocol cast comes in. You see the first one deals a lot of damage, but it is easily survivable. For the second one, we'll pop a Spirit Link Totem. We'll stand in that, take the damage, and then we'll move him next to the crystal before this 3rd cast is finished. Now, when you're stood next to the crystal with the boss, there's a safe zone around the crystal. Everywhere else in the room is deadly, and if you're stood outside of this safe zone, you will instantly die. So you need to be sure that you're in here. We stack together to try and bait the beams in a certain direction, make it easier to move. Once the crystal runs out of energy, it explodes. If you're within 15 yards when it explodes, you instantly die, so you need to move out, where you'll just take some reasonably high raid damage. That damage is not drop-off damage, so as long as you're out of the 15-yard zone around the crystal, you're safe. The last thing I'll touch on is the tank mechanic, which you'll see Exality and myself dealing with occasionally. The boss chain, he casts a combo here. So he casts a Shatter, which increases the damage you take, and then he casts an Obliterate, which is just a high damage ability. So you'll want one tank to take the Shatter, the other to take the Obliterate, and you essentially swap in between. Now we're going to watch the final cycle here. Again, we're going to take 2 casts of the Purging Protocol, because at the end of the fight, we want to have all of our cooldowns available to take as many casts as possible to try and survive and kill the boss. So I'm going to call for the raid to move to the final crystal in a minute. These threat neutralizations overlap quite heavily with the Purging Protocol, which can cause deaths here. So we've got the first and the second, and we'll use a minor cooldown to survive the second. And then we move next to the crystal and just deal with his mechanics as normal next to this until the crystal is drained of energy. The sentries, you can see, are firing out little orbs at people. That just deals a bit of raid damage. It's easily healable, but it's just something else to bear in mind as the fight goes on. Now we're in the final burn phase. We've got no crystals left. The boss has got 51 energy at the moment, so we've got approximately 50 seconds to nuke the last 20% of his health, plus the Purging Protocol cast that we can survive at the end. And you'll watch us do that here. We intentionally didn't sort of try to push the boss to dead as we were testing, but this is pretty much the whole fight that you're watching right now. With these threat neutralizations, they can actually come in while the boss is under a crystal as well, which is another reason to have the raid stacked in one place. So the threat neutralizations can be spread to 3 other points within the 15-yard zone around the crystal. Interestingly, that frontal stun as well, if you cleanse the stun with a human racial or with something else that removes stuns, it appears, at least on the PTR, that it instantly re-stuns you. So you can't sort of use it to be cleared. You have to stay in the stun for the full 5 seconds, at least on the testing. So we're dealing with Purging Protocol here. First cast was pretty nasty. The second cast, we throw up cooldowns. And if you throw up a cooldown at the end of a cast, it will last through to the next cast as well. That was the third. And you'll see the fourth here is going to wipe out the raid group. So that really is kind of the hard enrage, at least at this gear level. Overall, a pretty easy and repeatable fight. Quite an interesting DPS check. And because it's quite late in the instance, I imagine it will be the Sludgefist of Sanctum of Domination. If you've got any questions or you want to talk about it a little bit more, feel free to post in the chat. Thanks for watching, and I'll post some more summaries of the other PTR bosses as we get to them. Bye-bye.